Welcome back to Honoring the Journey. I'm Leslie Nease here with a brand new friend who happens to live in the same state. I'm so excited. Didn't even really realize that, Shane, until we were
Yeah,
just talking before we pushed record.
I know we could have
Um,
met in person for
I
this.
know we could have. We could have done this like over coffee for real, but
It just means we have to maybe do something again down the road.
in the future, yeah, for sure. Well, Shane Larsen is somebody I found on TikTok. You know, if you are in the deconstruction community, sometimes you are looking for content that will make you laugh because it can get a little heavy. And so there are some people. I actually found Rachel Wonderly. She has been on the show a couple of times. Um, and she is also somebody who deconstructed out of the Mormon faith. And then she reconstructed into Christianity and then deconstructed out of that again, Shane, if you can believe that.
That's wild.
Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, I highly recommend Shane's TikTok. It's a lot of fun, very lighthearted about some heavy-hearted stuff. So I asked him to be on the show and he agreed. And I'm so excited that you're here, Shane. Thank you so much for being on Honoring the Journey.
Yeah, of course. It's funny you say lighthearted to my content because it's lighthearted to those who it's intended for.
Yes.
If you understand, if you've deconstructed, and that's the space you're in, then yeah, it's lighthearted because you can poke and laugh at the same things about our past and who we used to be.
Mm,
But it doesn't come across too lighthearted to those people who are maybe still trying to defend the church and the
yeah.
criticisms that I get from those people who are not the intended audience.
Yeah, that's fun.
It sometimes doesn't come across so funny to them.
Yeah, I get a lot of that too. A lot of DMs from people who want to tell me that I need to you know, repent and
Repent.
that I'm leading people to hell. You know, it's a little that's heavy. You're right. That's tough. But
Yeah.
I just know I've done so much research. Shane, have you done research on neuroplasticity?
Neuroplasticity specifically, no, I would love to learn more
Uh,
about that.
It
But I
is
mean,
so amazingly cool, like how your brain works. And
uh-huh.
basically, when you are neuroplasticity is when your brain sort of learns something. You do it over and over again. That's why we repeat the same teachings and the same songs and this in religion because it helps you to really make it your truth, right? And
Yeah.
so then when something comes along and sort of tugs at that, it can be very offensive and very
Yeah.
angering. So they're not really mad at you. It's just the situation feels really uncomfortable
Yes.
when something that you've decided is the truth, and somebody's telling you, "Well, maybe let's think of it a different way." We can't. This is the
Yes.
truth, you know. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So my deconstruction, it's a lot of people will have, especially in Mormonism, if you say, "Hey, what was it that did it for you?" You know, the golden question.
yeah.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back for you? What was the bit of information? And honestly, a lot of times in Mormonism, it will often come down to the history
Mm,
or social issues. Those
mm,
seem to be the most common reasons why people say, "Oh, I started questioning because I read something about Joseph Smith that appeared by all reliable accounts to be the truth, like by his own writings. And I was surprised to see this information because I'd never seen it before. And I thought I knew everything I needed to know about Joseph Smith or,
yeah.
the early church and how it was founded and some things that are seem to be like the way it went down. But why was I never told that? Right. So
Mm,
history is a common one for Mormons. The other one is social issues. Man, I have a lot of friends who are gay, and suddenly I started realizing that I wouldn't want to treat them the way that like I've kind of been told to treat them my whole life growing up. Sure, love and be kind, but like beyond that, why are they not privileged to receive the same blessings and ordinances that I can as a straight person? And I do believe the science that it's not a choice, but the church is telling me that it's a choice.
mhm.
So those you have these moments for most Mormons where they'll say it's either history or social issues. Those are just a couple of examples. But for me, I came in a back rare door where it was literally a moment where I had a shift in my psychological like understanding about how we determine and process what's true in the world. So it was more of like an epistemological shift. And once I had made this epistemological shift, I said to myself, okay, I am now no longer going to just take things as true just because I've always thought they were true. Instead, I'm going to start considering, run them through the gauntlet of questions
Right.
critical
And
thinking.
perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, another part of my epistemology that changed was I've decided that something can be true that's very uncomfortable. And the discomfort of something doesn't have any say on whether or not it's true. So
Mm.
something could seem strange or foreign or really weird or crazy, but if the data and the evidence and the information is all pointing in that direction, I need to start to become more and more comfortable with accepting it as true.
Mm.
And so I had these kinds of shifts before. And so understanding neuroplasticity, to get back to the point,
Yeah.
that was a very big, for me, yes, I walked into my deconstruction of my religious beliefs with a new psychological approach, with a new understanding of human psychology and its vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
and this epistemological approach. And so, yeah, I learned about neuroplasticity, even though I might not have used the same word as that.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to me how many people don't even realize that's what's happening. And once you realize that's what's happening, you realize that that's why when you start asking questions inside of a religion, or at least this is how it was for me, maybe it was different for you, but I would ask questions and people would say, well, are you in the word? Are you, in fellowship with other believers? Are you going to church regularly? Because they know that if the message isn't continuing to ruminate in my brain, then I might start thinking of other things. And it feels very much like truth. And could it be true? I don't know. Like, I don't really think any of us know. And I think
Right.
that's kind of where I've landed. I'm like, I don't really know all the answers. I don't feel dogmatic anymore. I don't feel certain, but I feel a lot more at peace now because in the way that I believe everyone's journey deserves to be honored. Everyone's journey is heading in the direction that's right for them, and we have to trust that. And I wasn't allowed to do that before. It was like if they're not thinking and believing the way I'm believing and thinking, they're going to hell. I don't know if Mormons believe in hell, but evangelical Christians most certainly do. And it's the
Mhm.
underlying fear of hell is what keeps us proselytizing and telling people about our faith. Is
So
that how it is for Mormonism, or is it different there?
it's the same from a psychological standpoint, even though the description of it would on surface be different. So, for example, in Mormonism, the goal is to get to the celestial kingdom.
Hmm.
So you have, heaven, and then there's 3 degrees of glory in Mormon afterlife doctrine. You've got the celestial, the telestial, and terrestrial. Basically, it's just 3 kingdoms of glory. And so the way they soften the whole idea of hell is to say, like, oh, we don't really believe in hell. You just want to get to the celestial kingdom because that's where our families can live together forever.
Hmm.
That's where, like, the biggest, the most happiness of all happiness is there. Without, I'm trying to remember the phrases nowadays, but like, celestial kingdom is the goal. If you don't make it a celestial kingdom, it's a version of
Hell.
hell, right?
Yeah, because you're not
And
with
then
the people you love.
they do believe in the Bible. So
Right.
those same verses that do say, like, hellfire, brimstone, gnashing of teeth, all of that, those are all still used in regular language as they teach lessons and that sort of stuff. They just don't ever really like point to it as the core motivator behind our
Right.
decisions, right? And so in a way, it's kind of a strategic thing to like avoid this idea of like, hey, God's going to torture us and he's supposed to be an all-loving God, right? Because that's a direct contradiction.
Right.
They've softened it, but they do have something called outer darkness. Outer darkness is basically where like the sons of perdition will be. And in Mormon doctrine, you can only become a son of perdition if you know Jesus's truth, you know God's truth, and you then deny it.
So you.
So me, of course, growing up, I was taught, and the question would come up as I was raised when we talk about this in seminary, because also in Utah Mormon culture, you take a day out of your learning in high school and starting in junior high, and you go out to a church-owned property that's right off of the school. And I would say above 90% of all the high schools and junior highs and middle schools in the state of Utah have a seminary building where the church has bought property right next to the school, where basically it's on the same grounds. They don't put a fence up, nothing. You just walk right across to a different building, and you're in seminary for one day out of the schools that you just take it off.
So what if you're not Mormon and you're in that school?
You go to all the regular classes and don't go out to seminary. So you're not forced to do it. Obviously, it's an option
Okay.
if you want to come and join us. Like, because
Oh,
everyone's
of course,
welcome to
yeah.
come and be
We're
indoctrinated.
the cool kids. Come on.
Yeah. And some would, and
Yeah.
that's according to the way I was raised and taught in seminary growing up. If you knew Jesus's gospel, you knew him, and then you denied him, you would be labeled a son of perdition and you would go to outer darkness.
Right.
And so we would ask I remember the question being asked in seminary growing up, how do we know when we've known him enough that if we deny him, we would then be a son of perdition? And the answer that I always got growing up was, if you've been through the temple and you've learned the rituals in the temple, the sacred rituals in the temple, then you know Jesus' gospel to the fullest. And at that point, if you leave, you have denied him and you'll be a son of perdition. So that's how I was raised with it. Well, nowadays, so many people are leaving the Mormon church that everyone has a loved one, that idea, that principle that you would be a son of perdition and sent to outer darkness, if you have been through the temple and then you then leave the church, it's becoming a little too uncomfortable for the believers. And so the goalposts have shifted and they've started to say, oh, no, a son of perdition would really just be someone who's met Jesus face to face. So like today's modern prophets, or today's, our quorum of the 12 apostles that lives today, or what they're moving that goalpost to be a smaller number of people that could qualify for God to send them to outer darkness. But I was certainly raised on the principle that I've been through the temple. I'm now denying the gospel as being true. And so based on what I was raised with, I'm a son of perdition. I am definitely an apostate that will go to outer darkness, according to the way I was taught growing up. But everyone wants to move the goalposts now.
So, well, and I've noticed they like to move those goalposts a lot. It's something that the evangelical church doesn't do much of. We don't move any goalposts, because once it's in the Bible and that's it, that's done. Nothing changes ever, ever, ever. Even though cultures change and people change and the world changes, I actually kind of, it's weird. I think it felt comfortable knowing that nothing would ever change until, you're right, until I started really loving people who were LGBTQIA, or, a different religion, and trying to figure out, like, why would God create this person just to send them to hell?
Right.
Knowing that they would never be an evangelical Bible Belt Christian. Like, how in the world is that fair? And how is it fair that the majority of the people in the world that are born are not Bible believing evangelical, Christians? To me, it just didn't, it started to not make sense. But we were kind of told the same thing. Like, it was like, and I know this is what people are being told about me now, even though I do still believe in God. I'm not an atheist or anything. But I don't know what God looks like. I call God the divine. I feel like God is way bigger and not put into a religious box, but like religion. I just had Reza Aslan on the show, and he had the most amazing thing he said was that religion is like a language for your faith, and everybody in that religion speaks the same language.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Doesn't that make sense? And so
I hear that. Sure. Yeah.
we're all trying to like dig a well to get to the water, which is, the water's the same, but the way to get there is different. And we get upset when people are digging a well trying to get to the same water we're getting to, because we think our well is the only way to get there. Just a really simplified way of looking at it, but it like expanded my view, because I was always told, like, if somebody has tasted what it's like to know Christ, and then you change how you feel about it, then you were just never really one of us. You must have never really meant it.
The no true Scotsman fallacy.
Yeah. And that's hard. That
So
hurts.
I love that you spoke with Reza. He wrote Zealot, right?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Zealot is one of my favorite deconstruction books. I recommend that to anyone who's, especially when they start to get to like the Christ level of deconstruction, right? Like, so with me, I deconstructed Mormonism specifically first. I kind of started from an inside out, like closest to me and then out, right? I deconstructed Mormonism, and then I went to Jesus, and then I went to God. And when I was doing the deconstruction of Jesus itself, his book Zealot was a huge like help for me. It was just really, really great to absorb his knowledge and his understanding of the time and everything. That was a very big perspective shift. You said something earlier too, I wanted to point out, like in terms of Mormonism and talking about like the Bible and how evangelicals are really just going to like lock into like that word of in the Bible, and it just doesn't change, right? It has to stay the same forever.
Right.
Mormonism starts from their foundational and starting point was that of skepticism toward the Bible, because they had the Book of Mormon, which Joseph Smith brought to light, was supposedly scripture from prophets in the Americas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so already the Bible kind of took a backseat to the Book of Mormon, because the Book of Mormon was touted as the truest book, you know, on earth, and that anyone could get closer to Jesus Christ by following its principles, and that it served as a clarification to the ambiguity and confusion brought, you know, by the multiple translations of the Bible, right? So it was a clarification book for the Bible. And the Bible, it's almost like Bible was secondary. So when in Mormonism you were raised, if someone's doubting or having problems, they don't say, are you reading the Bible every day? They say, are you reading your Book of Mormon every day?
Oh, interesting.
Even though they still claim in its gospel, they still say the Book of Mormon, or sorry, the Bible is still like the word of God.
Right.
But when there's those confusion moments over in the Bible, you can say, what does the Book of Mormon say about that? And then they're using the Book of Mormon as the principal scripture.
The final say.
Oh, look, this is God's plan. He preserved this set of writings from prophets in the Americas, preserved it so it would be pure and more true and not corrupted by all of the different translations of the Bible and confusion and versions that we have, and the 50-year gap between Jesus's life and blah, blah, blah. Right. And
right.
So that's why we're pretty flexible with what the word of from the Bible says. Less so with the Book of Mormon, though.
Right. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Isn't it just so? To me, I think that was one of the things that sort of broke me open a little more. I had already started deconstructing when we moved here, but just meeting people from a different faith and being a minority for once, you know, I think being in the Bible Belt, it was very easy to walk out your faith. And when you have questions, you know, they're kind of brushed aside because, oh, we'll just get back in church. Oh, get in that fellowship, you know, make sure you're in the word. And so it was just hard to have questions because nobody really took them seriously. And if you did take it seriously, you were labeled a heretic or on a slippery slope. And so it was very difficult until I came out here. And honestly, I you know, some conversations I would have with Mormons, you know, some of the things they would say, like they're, you know, the way that if they didn't know the answer, they'd say, well, you know, God's ways aren't our ways. His ways are higher. We'll all figure it out one day. And I was like, wait, we say that, you know?
Yeah, that's a line from my church.
Wait a minute. That was my reasoning. What are you doing? Taking my reasoning and making reason out of it. You know, just some of the things. And I think it was the first time I realized, and I remember being in the car with my husband one day and I was like, honey, I don't get it. These people are so, I mean, they're lovely, you know, they're wonderful neighbors, wonderful people. You know what I mean? I'm like, are they going to really get to heaven one day and God's going to go, you know, you just didn't do it the right way.
Yeah.
Like I, you know, gave all of the true information to those people over there in the South in the Bible Belt. They know exactly what they're doing, but you went the wrong way. So I'm going to send you to everlasting, eternal torment. You know, all of a sudden I just went, wait a minute, the world's way bigger than I think we realize. And unless we get out of our little insular spaces, we're never going to experience that.
Yep. I get the question a lot. What if you show up to heaven and God says, sorry, you got it wrong? Me knowing that I have lived the best life that I can and that I was good and kind to people in general and human. I still made human mistakes, you know, but I did my best. And if I can show up in good conscience, in, you know, if I'm totally wrong, because unlike you, I have arrived at the atheist point, right? Like I just don't see any reason to think that there is any kind of deity up there that's going to judge me on the other side.
Right.
And so if I get to heaven and I was wrong about that, and God says, sorry, Mormonism wasn't right or whatever, like, no, that's just, usually I'm talking to a Mormon. So Mormonism, why did you leave? Why did you leave the covenant path? You keep saying in the word, and in Mormonism, it's on the covenant path. If You're staying in the word, or you're staying on the covenant path. That's the Mormon phrase for the same thing. Why did you leave the covenant path? You were born into the covenant. You were taught by goodly parents. You were taught the gospel, and you knew it was true because, sure, I had my confirming spiritual experience that confirmed it, that it was true. I can look back to that moment when I had that, right?
Same.
You got all those things, but then you left my covenant path. You left the gospel. Why did you do it? I have a sincere response and then follow-up question for this God. And the response is, I did the best I could with the brain I was given and the environment that I was raised in. I honestly and sincerely looked at the information and saw it made no sense to me. And so I made the choice that I thought was best for me and the people around me, including my children, including my wife, including my family. I understood that they weren't going to see it that way, but I did the courageous thing, again, what I was born with, a heart of courage, to step outside of my discomfort, of my comfort zone, and live what I thought was the truest, purest, best life I could for the better of people and the future of my, people to come in the future. I sincerely can honestly tell you, God, that was my experience. I did the best I could with what I was given. So my question to you now is, why did you do that to me? You had all the power. You built this world, supposedly. You built the environment. You built my brain. You knew how I would respond to it and the environment that I was put in. You even knew all along if I could convert back. You knew what to give me in order to convert me back, and you didn't give that to me. So how is this my fault? If you're the all-loving, all-knowing, all-creator, God, how is this my fault? I feel set up right now and cheated. So tell me, explain it to me. How can you explain yourself to me for doing what you did to me? Because I feel deceived right now. I was doing my best. So that will be my response and my question back to this God. Yeah. So, I mean, to summarize that, God created my brain, and he knew how it would respond to the environment that he created, and he put me here. And then he judged me for what he knew his work would do to me, and he knew the experience it would create for me. And then he's going to say in front of me, why did you not choose? Well, you know why. Yeah. You did it.
Well, and that's the whole thing for me. I mean, you're a very deep thinker, Shane Larsen, very deep. I love it. And I think deep too, but I can only go so deep because I like to simplify. I always say I should write a book called like Deconstruction for Dummies, like for like the lay person.
That's a great title.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
And not because I think I'm a dummy, but you know what I mean. But anyway,
no, it also seems to be a series of books out there that sell very well with that title. They
do, actually. Maybe I could approach them. Anyway, I just feel like, the whole thing is, I look at it like, if God is a parent, which is, the Bible makes it sound like God. I mean, sometimes it calls him a mother, sometimes it calls him a father, whatever. God compares God's self to a parent. And as a parent, there is absolutely nothing that any of my children could do that would make me want to send them to an eternal damnation. Absolutely. Nothing. I mean, I don't care what it is, because here's what I know. I know I love my children. I didn't bring them into this world just to torture them for all of eternity. I want more for them. And I feel like that would be, if God is a parent, there's no way God is up there going, well, they better get it right. Yeah. I'm not going to tell them which way is right, but by golly, if they don't get it right, I'm going to send them. Why punish somebody for a standard that really is, it depends on your culture, where you're born, what you're, who knows? I don't know. I was talking to Jim Palmer once, and I said, I don't know, maybe we're all wrong. And he goes, or maybe we're all right. And I was like, yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, we just don't know. And learning how to say I don't know has been one of the biggest gifts of deconstruction for me. Right? Yeah. Like there's so much freedom. Like I may be in some sort of back and forth with a person about this, or maybe it's something lighter, And if I can ever get to that moment where I can just say like, yeah, here are my thoughts and here are my sort of opinions and here's some things that I do know. But then at the heart of it, I can say like, ultimately, I don't know. The moment I say that every time, it's uncomfortable, but I suddenly like any kind of anxieties or tension that was like building up inside, when you can say, I don't know, like you can let go and pull back from the whole thing and just realize, hey, we're all in this together. And
Well, it's
I just feel like I become a better person in the moment that I can just accept that I don't know.
well, and I think when we say we don't know, it's us. I imagine myself letting go instead of white knuckling something
Yeah.
into being my truth. It's like I'm gonna let go and trust that God's gonna take me in the right direction. I think one of the biggest things for me too in deconstruction has been just getting to that place of, I don't feel like I don't feel the pressure and the stress of having to be on the quote right path unquote.
Yeah. Oh,
I feel
yeah.
like I am always on the right path for me. And it may be different for me than it is for other people. I'm not trying to get people to be on my path anymore. Like, I'm not doing this podcast and talking about my deconstruction so that other people will deconstruct. I
Yeah.
don't care what you believe as long as you're doing no harm. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
that's not my goal is just to be a voice to let people know who are starting to go through this and they're scared that
Yeah.
they're going to be okay.
Yeah. The efforts that I make online, which is mostly just TikTok these days, it really
Mhm.
is just to share with people like that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I started my deconstruction, I'm a very social person. I always have been. I've never struggled wherever I go to find someone or many people quickly that um, I can socialize with and bond with quickly. So that's never been a struggle for me.
Mm.
But the biggest struggle I ever did face in that regard was the moment I let go of I still had them as my friends, but like I realized the moment that I let go of my religion
Mm.
was letting go of what a lot of my friendships and social structure was built upon.
Yeah.
And so imagining and I felt the floor drop out from under me for a moment. And so if I imagine someone, if I'm empathetic to people who are less socially, for lack of a better word, skilled, right? They're just
Yeah.
lucky.
Mhm.
It's very easy for me to imagine how this is a destructive moment for those people.
Yeah.
For people who have their social structures built on this, have their community built around this, and you have the shared gospel as the foundation for all of that. You lose that foundation, and
Mm.
it's big and depressing and hard and dark for a lot of people. And so I knew right away that I wasn't alone because I knew I could already connect and find people out there. I was aware that there were people out there and I knew I'd have no problem connecting to them. But
Yeah.
I wanted to be a person for those people who maybe they don't feel the the bravery to go and connect with those new friends or whatever, because making friends is a harder thing to do, especially when it's, hey, I'm new to this deconstruction space. I've lost this structure over here. And I wanted to be a bridge for those people. Like, you are not alone was really the biggest message that I wanted to convey when I started to go public online.
So how long ago did you start going public?
Well, I guess we could rewind to like when it all started.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I'm 46 years old now. I was 40 when I deconstructed. So this was in about 2017 when I started to deconstruct. And I always like sharing that moment because, I mentioned earlier that for me, it was more of a psychological door that I walked through to start my deconstruction, an epistemological shift. I was teaching a class or a session in my workplace, and I read a book called A More Beautiful Question. The author's name is Warren Berger. Have you heard this story before? You're smiling. No? Okay. I do have a TikTok out with this story itself. And so I read this book. It's basically a business book, and it walks you through um, a method of questioning in order to spark new ideas or innovations or inventions. It gives a
Mhm.
lot of great real life examples. It's a good practical book. So I learned this book backward and forward, and I taught a session on it at my workplace at the time. I was working for a tech company, and we did sort of like a brown bag lunch where I taught this methodology. We did breakout sessions, and we learned how questioning is a powerful tool to help you find ways you might be locked into ideas that are old or not standing up to like what's actually true, and people get locked into certain ideas or concepts and they stick with them just because they're so emotionally attached or whatever. They worked before, and so they think they're always going to work, whatever these things are. It breaks down your epistemological approach to what you think the next best thing would be to do for your company, because like I said, it's a business book mostly. But at the end of the book, they say you should apply this questioning methodology to everything in your life. And they kind of take a chapter to talk about how it can apply into your social groups, bring it to your book club and ask new questions this way. Take a look at your core beliefs even, and all this. So in my presentation, I did all this, and then I closed with the same thought that we should apply the questioning method to everything in our lives. After I finished this training, I was walking back to my desk, and a coworker of mine walked up to me, and he was being very complimentary. He just said, "That was really great. I loved it. Thanks for doing that. And I agree with what you said at the end, that we should apply this into everything, every aspect of our life." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And then he leaned in and said, "Except for the church, right?"
Oh,
And
ouch.
something about the moment just like hit different, right? Like
Hmm.
I kind of had this awakening moment where I was like, wait, yeah, no, wait,
Maybe.
yeah.
What if?
Like, do I believe that everything that I just taught just now, that
Mm,
nothing is off the table for questioning? If you think something is true, you should be vulnerable enough with that thing to
yeah.
bring it to the table of questioning and allow everybody else to go ahead and criticize it. And I should criticize it too. And I should look for information that might disprove my preconceived notions about this thing. So I was applying in real time. I was trying to get out when he said, "Except for the church," right? I was trying to get out but I couldn't, because everything I had just taught in this presentation was showing me how this is not good thinking if truth is the ultimate goal.
Hmm.
And so I remember just a moment, like in my memory, the visual thing and going on in my brain was like a kaleidoscope. It was like a downward spiral, just of like, you haven't ever faced this. You have never truly questioned your religion. This is fraudulent of you to continue forward after what you just presented to this group of people, if you truly believe in it, and you're not going to go question your religion now. And so that was my shift. So from that point on, it was like everything, I'm not listening. When they say to me, don't trust these sources or don't whatever, I'm going to see that as a red flag. You can't tell me to not go. I'm going to go read it because you're telling me not to read it, because I want to know truth. And if this thing is true, I want to put it through the gauntlet of truth questions.
Well, and I think that questions, when they first start, you have this idea of like, okay, well, I'm going to start asking these questions because I am certain that
Mm-hmm.
what I believe is true.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's true, then there's no reason not to ask the questions.
No.
And when I went on my first initial, like in 2016, 2017, when I first started deconstructing, I didn't even know that's what it was, honestly, Shane. I had no idea. I was just
That's a new
asking
word.
questions.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
And it just kind of, it's almost like the word that we're using to put language. It's kind of like a religion. It's another well. You know what I mean? Like we're
Well,
just building another well.
I don't know if it was the same over on the side of like evangelical Christianity with,
Yeah.
but like in Mormon talk, for when I first walked into this space, it was faith crisis. Faith
Yeah.
crisis was sort of like the big, but a lot of people
We're
were uncomfortable with
backsliding.
that. Yeah, it's a little bit of a backslide term. And so
Yes.
I think once deconstruction came up, it was like,
Yeah. It
that's
just
it.
felt safer.
That's the, yeah.
And that's what you're doing. You're taking
Mhm.
your stuff. It's not destruction. We're not trying to destroy anything. We're trying to confirm. And my intentions were 100%, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. My intentions were to prove it true. I
Mhm.
thought, I'm going to ask these questions. I'm going to find the answers so that I don't have to worry about these questions anymore because they're really nagging me. They're getting on my nerves. I want them to go away. And the only way that I'm going to find it is if I find the answers. And I thought I would find the answers and I would stay right where I was.
Mhm.
But the answers were not what I expected.
Mhm.
And 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 that was really scary. I
Yeah.
mean, the thing that I planted my flag on, was shaky at best. And and now it's like, now that I'm speaking out about it, there are people that are so they're still really into it. And I respect that. Love you. I'm not trying to change your mind, but I am trying to say, get out of your bubble for a little bit.
Yeah.
Go see how big this world is. If your world is only as big as your community and your community is insular, you are never going to be able to understand how incredibly short-sighted it is to say that this is it. And everyone else is wrong. You don't realize how many everyone else's there are, and how many wonderful, lovely. Shane, you're lovely. You know what I mean? Like, you're so wonderful. Like, I can't imagine that you would get to heaven and God would go, nope, sorry.
Yeah.
Outer darkness, out of here, buddy.
Yeah.
To me, it
I don't
doesn't
think
make
so
sense.
either.
Why would you create somebody just to do that to them? That's cruel.
Exactly.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Especially like I have the self-confidence these days, and I have I know where I am today versus who I have been in the past. I know I'm a better person, even accepting all of my faults.
Mhm.
I know I'm getting better and better and better all the time because I'm trying hard and I'm doing that, right? So I would still just have that same question to God. Why did you just deceive me every day? Like right now, I'm feeling like I'm a better person than I was yesterday, and I'm doing the best for the other people around me and my kids and my wife, right? Like, why would you make me feel like you made me feel like I was doing better. Every step of the way, I was trying to be better, and I felt like I was getting better. Why'd you make me feel that? Why'd you design me the way I was and put me
such
in
a
the
good point.
environment? You know what I mean? Like,
the
you did
community
to
that
me.
you're in, the book, when you picked that book up, why didn't God just knock it out of your hands?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, we left it there.
Yeah.
I do. I feel like every life is not only beautiful, but it's like a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
And you get to just find these beautiful things out about life. And, one of the biggest freedoms, I guess I've found, is just being able to enjoy the journey. Whereas before it was all about heaven. We're just looking forward to that. Like, did the Mormons say this is not your home? We're just passing through. This is temporary.
The phrase that the Mormons use is, "We are here to be in the world, but not of
the world." Yes, we did that one too.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know who started it, but one of our religions was.
We did, of course. It was the
pretty close.
Mormons. Of
Well,
course,
yeah, 'cause
Mormons said it first. You're copying us.
Well, it is funny because when I came here, everybody was like, "Oh, Leslie, you're going to be such a light. You're going to go shine so bright for Jesus over in those, those poor Mormons. They're so lost."
And every Mormon is seeing you as like,
as the lost.
Yeah, no, she's going to be a missionary opportunity. We have an evangelical Christian. She seems like such a good person. She would make such a great Mormon.
She'd make a great Mormon if only.
She's going to make a great Mormon.
But it's just so funny to me how sure everybody was that this was a cult, and yet then like they think the same thing about us. It's like, okay, so that's why I do what I do. That's why I love to have people. I mean, even atheists. I've even had evangelicals on here. I don't care. Just tell me about your faith. Tell me about what you believe, because I do believe that the more that we just shut our mouths and just listen to what people's stories are, it humanizes them.
Yeah,
we're not this like crazy person who's believing something that we would never believe. All of a sudden it's a human being, and it makes sense why they believe that. And of course, because that's their culture and their parents brought them up that way, and it is so different when you stop and listen. And I don't know that many evangelicals are listening to my podcast, but if they are, I hope that they're not just listening to pick it apart, that they're listening to understand. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's life-changing.
An interesting experience I had while I was right in the middle of my deconstruction years. I was probably already done with Mormonism. I had decided that it wasn't true. And I went to India for a work trip. And I was there for about a week. And I remember having conversations with my coworkers that I was working with in India. And a couple of times we got into like the religion conversation. And I just kind of asked them questions about it, what they thought about God. And they're like, they were kind of like, what do you mean? Because in Hinduism, you've got multiple gods, right? It's polytheism. And is that the right term? I think that's the right term.
I think so. Yeah.
And so many gods, right? Just the idea alone of being raised in a place where there are many gods and people just kind of like choose the one that they kind of like, you know, or whatever, it has like a psychological, it gets back to neuroplasticity. These people were like totally cool with like how I was raised, because I was talking to them about, I was raised in Mormonism, and they're like, oh yeah, we have some neighbors that are that follow Jesus too, you know, like, oh yeah, it's lovely, it's so great. The openness, the way how open they were to just like the path and the journey. And I had to ask myself while I was there, like, what is it that opens you up? Why is it that you don't think you're right? Why are you not someone who's very black and white right now? Do you not think you're right and I'm wrong? I don't get it. You're not thinking you're right and I'm wrong. Yeah, right. As opposed to like this American black and white, us, them thinking that we're so locked into. And then especially when it comes to like our God beliefs, where we think we have to be a converting force in the world with our religion, because that's how Mormonism too, right? Like, we need to be the armies of Helaman. We need to get out there and go on our missions and all that. It was such a shock to me to see the rest of the world that a part of the world where they're not functioning under that idea, right? They were open to everything. And so
that's amazing.
I really learned like from like Hinduism that you don't have to be so rigid in your ways, and you don't have to be a missionary church.
You don't have to save the world.
Truth. You don't have to. Yeah, exactly.
And that was one of the things coming out of evangelicalism for me. You know, I was such an evangelist. Like, I was sharing the gospel on planes. I know I was getting on people's nerves. I know it. But I would just share it all the time because,
been there.
You know, because I'm telling you, I can tell that you were probably very similar to me. We could be like brother and sister with our, you know, personalities and excitement and, you know, all of that. But I feel like, you know, that had to just really grind on people's nerves, but people were so gracious.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, I wish I could have been as gracious to them as they were to me. You know, I still keep in touch with a guy. His name's Brent, and he and his wife were on a plane once, and he sat next to me, and she was like in the next row with their kids. And I talked to that man about Jesus the whole time, gave him a Bible, you know, and we're still like friends on Facebook. And he's like, so you're going through something. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you know what? But he said, no matter where you've been in your walk, you know, I've seen you. You always just love people. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, and that's what I'm kind of coming to. It's like, if God is love, then that's what I want to be, you know?
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. Just love people.
I love the religion of love.
Yeah, it should be one. If it's not, I mean, maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe I see a lot of. I think my Facebook profile says like race, human, home, earth, religion, love, or something like that.
Oh, that's perfect. No, I love that, and I do think that is my goal now. You know, I don't worship love, but I strive to be loving, and I want people to know that when they're around me, that it's genuine love. I'm not just like, I don't want to just like win you. You're not a project to me. I'm not like this Amway salesperson trying to get a commission. You know what I mean? Like a crown in my, or a jewel in my crown by, you know, bringing you into heaven with me. Yeah. I don't care whose path or what path you're on, but I want to walk beside you. I want to hear your journey. And then if you need to keep going, you go your way, I'll go mine. It's not a big deal, but our lives can just get so much richer when we listen to people instead of trying to change them or bring them onto our path.
Yep. I think back on conversations that I had, because same thing. I mean, I loved my 2-year mission as a Mormon missionary. I went to Chile, Santiago East mission. And so I learned another language. That was an awesome thing, right? To just experience being in another place.
Was that, I'm just curious, was that eye-opening for you at all as a young Mormon guy? Like, or were you so entrenched in it that
so entrenched at that point? You've gone to 2 months of like morning, like daybreak to dusk to dawn, learning the gospel. Your every bit, everything you eat, breathe, sleep is how to convert. And so you're so locked in that most people, they go and you can have an experience in another country, truly seeing yourself as the light walking through to convert the world.
Yeah.
and have very little perspective shifting, right? Like, because you're so locked into the work. And that was me. I was super locked into the work. I don't, I'm not a fast learner, and especially by the books. I didn't learn the language well in my first 2 months in my missionary training experience. But as soon as I got there to the country and I was practicing the language, walking in the streets, teaching these lessons that we would teach people to try and convert them, I picked up the language at lightning speed. And I called it a miracle, and I called it the gift of tongues. So that's the Mormon version of gift of tongues. They
Just
don't
being able to
believe
learn
it's
a language
some
quicker.
weird language. Yes, the Mormon version of gift of tongues is that our missionary program, it allows people sharing the gospel to pick up the gift of tongues and learn it real quick. We were teaching this one person who was deaf, and he had his own in-home sign language that he was learning, that he would use in his house with his family. I picked that up in a couple of weeks, and he got baptized, right? And so another moment of the miracle of the gift of tongues, right? So I had all these confirming. I guess what I'm saying here, I'm conveying to you just how pro-Mormon and convert Mormon I was. And so I think back on these conversations that I had with people throughout my life when I was in this mindset. Oh, this person's being so nice and open to talking about the gospel, and they didn't like cringe away when I told them I was Mormon. And oh, maybe I could convert here, right? Maybe I could share a Book of Mormon with them, or have the missionaries drop by their house. And the times in my life when I did that, looking back now, I think about all the people that I spoke with who were kind to me and who were open and who were nice and smiled and heard me out and everything. When in the back of their minds, they're most likely thinking, this poor kid that's been like locked into this, but I'm just going to be kind to him. Those are such good people. I wish I could go find every one of them and say, like, thank you so much for being gracious with me when you had this other understanding and other perspective. And then the ones who like I thought were jerks, who just like turned away and they didn't want to talk to me about it, and they were like, yeah, whatever, and they were ignoring me. And at the time I was like, oh, those guys are jerks, they're mean, they're whatever.
They're going into outer darkness.
Yeah, well, now I see those people as normal. Those are just normal people that didn't want to talk about my obsession with religion and didn't want to try to be converted today. Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing how that all shifts in your mind. I wish I could go back to every single one.
I know. Go on the tour. Go visit everybody who was kind to you. Yeah, I think about that a lot, about how so many people were so kind to me. And because I think when you're excited about something, it's like zeal without knowledge. Like, you're so excited, like you don't have any self-awareness. All you want to do is, and you really feel like you're doing people the biggest favor.
You do.
By being this evangelist.
I'm
making sure that talk about having purpose, Shane. Being the mouthpiece of God Almighty, so that people will not go to hell for eternity.
That's right.
Is purpose.
So those black badges that you see on the missionaries.
Yeah.
That's bearing the name of Jesus Christ upon you. That's the literal translation of that prophecy, or that, scripture or whatever.
Wow.
So yeah, that adds a lot of purpose and meaning to that moment for missionaries in the Mormon religion, for sure.
So how is your family with where you're at, Shane? Is this
let's
contention or no?
Let's keep walking through. We can get there for sure.
Okay.
So it's 2017. I have this moment where I decided to ask the questions, and it was a quick deconstruction by most deconstruction stories. My wife was pregnant at the time, and she doesn't sleep well normally, and worse when she's
I can relate.
So I was sleeping like in the living room on a mattress, just to give her as much peace and quiet in the bedroom as possible, right? But what it did was it created this moment where like I could just read and consume all the information, and I was staying up until like 3-4 every night. I had a whole world of new material to look into and read. What about this? Oh, I've heard about this thing over here. Oh, and Google searching like crazy, and realizing that when you Google search something, the first page is all going to, at the time it was sponsored. The church has now gotten a lot smarter with just manipulating the algorithms to give you the results that they want. you usually have to go past the first page to get past anything that's church sponsored, that's
Right.
church
Yeah.
controlled, or
True.
they are manipulating the results to
They
these.
know the questions that you're
They
going to
know the
ask.
search. They know
Yeah.
the search terms, and so they're paying to show you
That's
the.
interesting.
And so once I realized that, it's like, oh, that's good to know, because now I can get to like other information. I can get outside perspective, because that's important for me. But also, what does that mean on a deeper level about the church's intentions here? Like, wow, okay. Anyway, so it doesn't take long when you're taking an honest approach.
Yeah.
And you are taking everything from you're trying to remove all subjectivity and remove your feelings, and you're willing to walk into some pain in honor of learning what the truth is. It was fast, like just a couple of months of deep dive, and I had deconstructed things real fast. So what happened there was, I'm an honest person about this sort of thing, and I would have told my wife all along, but it happened so fast that before I even realized it, I had done this thing without her. Right? I had deconstructed my belief in Joseph Smith as a prophet, the Book of Mormon as any kind of scripture, and all these things that we're going to every Sunday and learning about. All of it's all made up.
So were you and your wife sealed in the temple?
We were.
Oh, that's hard.
We were sealed in the LA temple,
Okay.
in 2010, and so it had been like 7 years. We were married, and we were. It was late in the pregnancy that I finally had a moment where I can't even remember what we were talking about, but the church came up, and I realized this is my moment to like let her know. And so I just said, I don't think I'm there anymore. And it was a shock to her. And I feel really, really bad about the way it worked out. And yeah, there's also that moment where like, it's called the rebound effect, where I think that really scared her. And where I was already so far in that, I think there was a bit of a rebound effect, and she went to her community, the church, which is great. I'm glad she had some support and community to go to. She got a calling in the church. Do they do callings similar? Like basically you have like your bishop in a ward, which is like a congregation, and he is responsible to give callings to everyone. It's a way to keep them active. And it could be you're over the women's group, or you're over the men's group, and you're over the youth at this age, and you're like either a teacher or a counselor for that group or whatever. And she got a calling, which was over the women's group, the Relief Society. And so they were doing their best on their end to say like, oh, he's gone, we need to keep her and save her. Right. And so there was a few years there where it was like, it was tough. We were learning new ground. We had the floor ripped out from under me. On my end, I'd had my religious beliefs stripped out from under me, and on her end, she's had the relationship, the one of the bigger foundational pillars of our relationship was torn out, and now she's afraid where it might send me and how I might change, and how those are all valid fears. And
where would she, according to the Mormon tradition, like where would she go? Because like, don't you go to your husband's like?
It's one of those big gray areas. It's one of those moving the goalposts rapidly and all the time. So
I was like, that poor woman, not only did she, was worried about you now, but like future, like where's she going to go?
Her? Yeah. What does it mean for her and her afterlife and our kids, and like, how are we going to start? Like we've agreed on how to raise the kids all along. And now what, right? What are we going to be teaching our kids now? And so all of those fears are valid, and all of those fears are very real. There's a really great podcast out there. If you haven't heard of it yet, I think they won an award in the early years.
Mormon Stories.
Well, there's Mormon Stories with John DeLynn, which is also a fantastic podcast, and a bottomless wealth of information, knowledge, and stories, right? But another one is called Marriage on a Tightrope. It's a couple, a Mormon couple, who he has deconstructed, just like me, and he deconstructed in 2017. Our stories are very similar. His name is Alan Mount, and her name is Katie Mount, and she has stayed faithful. And so it's the mixed faith marriage story. And their podcast is brilliant because they started it very early on in his deconstruction. And they were able to say stories. They were able to tell their story as they moved through this uncomfortable space. In the first episode, he's able to say, I no longer believe in the Mormon church. I was raised as a Mormon, and I do not think it's true anymore. And here's my wife. She does believe that it's still true. Walk through this journey with us. And
Oh,
they've now done like
powerful.
hundreds of episodes. It's called Marriage on a Tightrope. It's fantastic. You should check them out.
I will, for
Alan,
sure.
Alan and Katie Mount.
I'll put a
And
link to that in the show notes too.
yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
they're good friends of ours, because one of their early episodes, they said, if you're going through this, we want to find you. We want you to know you're not alone. Let's go to lunch. Let's go to dinner. So we reached out. My wife and I reached out to them, and we went to dinner, and we've been really good friends with them since. So good. They're doing a really, really great work, because mixed faith marriage is a real thing that continues, and is going to continue to be a space where people struggle as long as people continue to deconstruct their religions.
Well, it's really interesting to me, Shane, that you're a man in the Mormon religion deconstructing, because I feel like men really get the good end of the stick in the misogynistic, patriarchal.
They certainly do. I never bought any of that. Like,
neither did my husband.
I was just like, I was lucky, I guess, because again, hey, God, you gave me this brain, right? Like, and so when I would hear like, oh, it's ultimately the man's choice, he makes the final decision. You should have a good conversation, but if you can't decide in the end, he has the gospel, or he
trumps everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't I think of the term right now? He has
the last word.
God's the priesthood. Yes. Thank you. Yes, he has the priesthood, and so he ultimately makes the decision. I never ever, like, especially once I met my wife, and how much I loved her, I never wanted to be the person that was like, I'm choosing for you. No, like I married so up that there's no way I'm going to, like, you're the one. You, like, we want to have babies, it's totally up to you. Like, I did not ever really buy into any of that stuff, and so I don't know, maybe that was part of
my husband didn't either. My husband actually deconstructed. Of course, he would never call it that. He would say he wised up. That's what he would say. Yeah. I wised up way before I did, but he never told me. He just supported me. He's like, I'll do what you want to do. This stuff just isn't important to me. It's just not important to me. And it is important to you. So I'm going to support you. And even to this day, he would say, if you decide to go back and be an evangelical and all of that, then I'm right there with you in church. I'll go. No big deal.
That takes a lot of character, for sure.
Yeah. He's a good man. He's definitely, I married up too. So
he sounds like a better person than I, because I have my moments where I really struggle with things, and I have a hard time letting go of it. So kudos to him. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you, because I know it's about to be the weekend, and but wow, what an incredible conversation. This has been so much fun. And my dogs agree. See, they're in the background being so excited. Thank you, Shane.
I feel like we only scratched the surface, because it's such a bottomless, like, thing and story.
Well, I'll have to have you back then. How's that? We'll have you come back.
I would love it. I've loved our conversation today, Leslie. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so much fun. Yeah. And hey, Shane, I honor your journey. That was really incredible. And you were just so vulnerable and open with us. And that's all I ask. I just want people to just be real. And you talk about the hard stuff, but you also talk about the good stuff you've learned along the way. And that's the way life is, right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but
that's right. Thanks so much for that, Leslie. And I also honor your journey as well.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you doing what you do. This is a great platform. And all those deconstructors out there, stay strong and know that you're not alone.